What a handsome young man. What happened to him? This is what 40-something years of radio and TV will do. It started like that. Oh, I've got to get all my little notes and things here. I had so many things I wanted to say while I'm in Trenton, Georgia. Yes! I love Trenton, Georgia. I love Dade County. Love all of you. See so many familiar faces of people I've met and known through the years. My Aunt Tukey is here. The beautiful red there. Tukey lives in Rising Fawn, and she's become a converted Dade County and one of the best people in the history of the world. Larry Moore is over there, my hero. I just think the world of you and all you do, and it's just great that you can be here today. I told Evan I'll come if Larry Moore is going to be there, so that's sealed the deal. Josh Engel, the new superintendent, y'all give him a big hand. I cover schools in a large part for Channel 3, and Josh has just been one of the most outstanding educators that I've met in the 20-odd counties that I covered. When I heard that he was going to be superintendent, I said, Dave's got another winner. Y'all on a good winning streak. This will continue that. And I can keep going on naming names. Gosh, Evan Stone, I'd rather frankly listen to you the rest of the time than hear from me, because Evan is just a great broadcaster and such a booster of Dade County, and I hope you all know what a jewel you have in heaven. Sometimes I think those of us who are around people for a certain amount of time or who live in a certain place for any number of years, we take some things for granted. And so I want you, if there's anything that you can take away from what I'm going to tell you and talk about today, you all shouldn't take Dade County and Trenton and Rising Fawn and Lookout Mountain and Davis and Wildwood. You know, you have something special here. You have special people here. Never take it for granted. You all are blessed, and you all have really, I think, been given a gift of just a wonderful place to live with beautiful scenery, nice people, and unlimited opportunities. So I want to brag on Dade County and Trenton a little bit, talk about my history with it. One of the things that Evan and George had asked me before I was coming, they said, you know, what do you want to talk about? And I said, well, I have a new book coming out. It's not out yet, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'll get into that in a little bit, but I mainly want to focus on Dade County and Trenton and some of my memories from growing up just on the hill, Sand Mountain, Bryant, Alabama. As recently as yesterday, one of my co-workers at Channel 3 was talking about some correspondence he got from someone on Sand Mountain, and said, you know, do you know a person named so-and-so? Because, you know, she's on Sand Mountain, so you probably know her. I said, how big do you think Sand Mountain is? He said, I think you knew everybody on Sand Mountain. So I took him over to a map and said, I don't think I do. It's bigger than you think. It covers a lot of space. But in my little corner of the world growing up, Trenton was a big deal for me. Dade County was a big deal for me. And I started thinking and writing down some of my memories. First off, how many of you, let's say, at least grew up partially in Dade County and Trenton? Raise your hand if you are a Dade County native or grew up. So it's about half and half. About half of you will probably remember some of the places and names I'm going to talk about. The other half, well, that's why we call this lunch and learn. You're going to learn something. My first haircut was in Trenton, Georgia. Right there on the square, there were two guys named Woodrow Tinker and Tommy Sims, and they were both very, well, one more than the other, but somewhat politically active, and they would talk about current events, and the people in the barbershop would talk about things in the news and stories going on, and I learned so much in that barbershop, and I'll never forget that time there at the barbershop. Now, right there in that same building, I go eat at Lolito's all the time, so it's kind of like going home for me. The Bank of Dade was where I had my first bank account, one of those little passbook savings accounts, and I would pump gas in our family store in Bryan, Alabama. My dad paid me 2 cents a gallon to pump gas, and that turned into some money after a few years as gas prices went up. But that was where I would go every week to keep that bank account going. A few years later, Fred Stevens opened the Citizens Bank down the street, and I opened an account there, kept that going for years and years. So I've always invested in Dade County. I am alive today partially because of Dade County, because there's some angel that looked over me back in the days when I would drive from Bryant, Alabama to Chattanooga to work on radio or TV. on snowy, icy days, coming down Sand Mountain at Kirby Road, no guardrails back in those days. I was driving a Mercury Grand Marquis, rear-wheel drive. It was kind of like skating, had no traction whatsoever, and I came so close so many times to driving off that mountain, but some angel in Dade County kept me alive, and I'm forever grateful for that. There's no excuse, nothing I can think of other than that. What else can I say about Dade County? There was a doctor when I was growing up. Does anybody remember Dr. Owenby? He was a Dade County doctor, and he was our family doctor, and when I was little, they would take me there whenever, some issue came up. And he was elderly. I was 6, 7 years old. And he looked older than anybody that I knew at that time. And I asked my older sister, Elaine, who was a teenager at the time, once I asked her, how old is Dr. Owenby? And she said, I think he's about 110. And older sisters never lie, so I believed her for a long time. And the next year would come around, I'd say, oh, he's 111 now, 112. And I don't know how old he lived to be, but he was a great doctor. He also helped keep me alive. Just recently, I was honored to speak at the funeral of a Dade County native, Haley Gass Forster, who lived to be 110. Last month she passed away, and was still sharp as a tack with an incredible memory until the week before she passed. But she was very proud to be a Sand Mountain, Dade County girl, and remembered so much history and so many stories that she would tell me about of growing up after she was born in 1911. And again, was with us until just last month. I remember Wright's Restaurant in Trenton, right there on the square. My parents would go there after a hard day at the store, and I was a picky eater, plus I was a spoiled brat. So being the baby of the family and the only one at home at that time, I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and they would go to Wright's Restaurant. The owner's name was Oogie, I remember. Does that sound right? And they would order, steak and all the good stuff. I wanted a hot dog, and Wright's didn't serve hot dogs. So I would go about 3 doors down to the Busy Bee and get a hot dog. Mr. Wright looked at me like I was crazy because I wasn't interested in his steaks. Anybody remember the Dixie Cream? Okay, that's where I got my first introductions to corn dogs and soft serve ice cream. I'll forever thank them. In more recent years, Larry's, Randy's, the Deli Dipper. I mean, this Trenton has been my go-to for great food throughout my entire life. Price Pharmacy. Is Price Pharmacy still open? When I was a kid, Price Pharmacy sold magazines and records. Thank goodness y'all are here, because some people that I work with don't know what a record is. 45 RPM records, and I bought the first record I ever bought was at Price Pharmacy. It was Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, and we all still play that on the radio today. But I think I spent about 67 cents of my gas money on that at Price Pharmacy. And I would read all the magazines. My mom would be doing some shopping or picking up a prescription. My older sisters had taught me to read fairly early, and I would spend a great deal of my time in Price Pharmacy reading the magazines. Newsweek, Time, everything they had. It was like my own little library. The ShopRite. I remember going to the ShopRite with my dad on Friday nights, and they had this little kid car, one of these little cars you could drive around in, way up out of reach of the kids. And I threw a tantrum one night that was so epic that my dad, who was one of the, Tukey, I think you would agree, one of the most serious, hard-working, just a down-the-middle kind of guy, gave into my tantrum and bought me that car at ShopRite, and I drove that until I was about 18. Great moment in my life, and I'll always be partial to ShopRite. The KO gas station. Does anybody remember the KO gas station on Highway 11? That was our next stop on Friday nights. We would always fill up at KO, and just a great experience. And Cloudland Canyon. I have written so many stories and told so many people. Pretty much everybody I work with in Channel 3 has to come to Cloudland Canyon and hike down to the waterfall. I do it once a year at least. Haven't made it this year yet, but I'm going to. Every year I go down, and make it back up just to see if I still can. And I'm going to do it again this year. Every time I have had a serious life decision, getting married, changing jobs, anything of any magnitude, I sit on that big rock about halfway down the hike to the waterfall. I take a little, like a notepad, and I do like a pro and con list of whatever decision I'm trying to make in the peace and solitude of Cloudland Canyon. And it has never sent me the wrong direction. There's something about that place that just has this great feeling of inspiration to me, the scenery, the sounds, the view, and that is so close to my heart. The Forrester Sisters. I was the first one to put them on TV back in the 80s. I was working at Channel 12 at the time, and these 4 young ladies who talked more Southern than even I did at the time said they were going to make a record. And, you know, a lot of people were doing that back then, and most of them really didn't get anywhere. But there was something so special about them, and they were so sweet and genuine and sang like angels and harmonized so beautifully. I've had a special bond with them ever since. And how cool is it to be from the same county that produced the Forrester Sisters? Well, that's something to be proud of. They are just amazing. Ingalls. Let me tell you about Ingalls. Ingalls opened the day my first son was born. So I stop at Ingalls every time I'm in Trenton. It's also a special place. And to see how this community came together in 2011, and I'm talking about Moore's Funeral Home, Ingalls, some of the places on Highway 75 on the mountain and all around us, how this community came together. I truly believe Trenton and Dade County rebuilt faster than anybody. Phillip Street was a big part of that. Phillip was among those who was instrumental in organizing people to clean up the debris and put things back together again. But this community, one thing I love about Trenton and Dade County is that when this horrible, devastating storm came through a few years ago, I was down here several days later taking pictures and taking video, and you know the way Sheriff Cannon, former Sheriff Street, and so many others I can name came together, putting their own personal losses aside and putting this community up and running again. It was inspiring. And it seemed to me like Dade County didn't wait on someone else to hand them the solution or to bring in outsiders to fix the problem. Neighbors got together, pitched in, worked hard, a lot of sweat, a lot of generosity. And I was just moved by how Dade County was the first to really rebuild in a big way. Very impressive. I'll never forget that. And just watching Ingalls again and Larry's Funeral Home go from ashes to what they are now was just inspiring. It was in record time. I remember when the Red Food Store opened, September of 1972. I remember that because we had a grocery store up in Bryan at the time, and our revenue went down that day and never came back up. So not all the memories were great, but still, that was something that was much needed here, and it's good to see that almost 50 years later, Red Food, Bilo, now Food City, still a very vital part of the community. Softball. Dade County and Trenton was a softball hotbed. When I was a kid, the Moores and the McMahons and the Blevins and so many others I can remember just had this grip on local sports, and the competition was great, the camaraderie was great, and for many years I was at Trenton 2 or 3 nights a week with our store-sponsored softball team, making relationships and friendships that have lasted all this time. And there's so many great athletes that have come from Dade County. How many of you see my column in the Dade County paper? Thank you for reading, I appreciate that. How many of you just raised your hands because you were afraid nobody else would? That's all right, I accept it. But I want to thank the Dade County Sentinel for running my column each week. I started doing that 7 or 8 years ago, and Eddie Gifford, another one of my heroes, I pitched the idea to him and I said, I'd really like to do this. I'm enjoying some writing. People seem to like it. I'd like to do a weekly column for you. And the reason, very honestly, when I was growing up, we got the Dade County Sentinel, and the publisher at that time was a gentleman named Albert Forrester. Does that ring a bell with anybody? And I would see his picture next to his column each week. It was always an informative and entertaining column. And he was elderly at the time, and I just remember thinking, this man, this Mr. Forrester is so wise and so smart, and he's in the paper every week. Wow, that must be really something. And now I think people look at my picture, my column, and go, who is that old man in the paper? So I'll never compare to Mr. Forrester, but just the honor of being in the newspaper that he was associated with for so long is just humbling to me. And Eddie Gifford, when I presented him the idea, he said, let's give it a try for about 10 weeks. And he goes, I think he thought after about 10 weeks, I'll be tired of it and I'll forget. The column that's in this week's paper is number 390. So I'm really proud of that and proud to be in the Dade County paper and many others since then, but it started in Dade County. But there are so many other memories. I was at the grand opening of Hudson Wire, and I still remember what it smelled like. Nothing else like it, the paint, the paint smell there. I still love driving on Highway 11. I probably take that route more than I do 59 when I go back and forth from here to Chattanooga. And I should tell you that I bring greetings from Chattanooga. In case you didn't know, that's an old Indian term which means orange barrels on freeway. Although y'all are giving them a run for their money right now. You're doing pretty good on that too. But still, I'm going to go back today on 11 just because it's beautiful. That's after I stopped at the produce stand, my friend Ralph West across the street here on Main Street. So I encourage you to do that too. But, with Trenton and Dade County, I mean, I remember when you had the 657 prefix, that meant you lived in Trenton. If you were 462, you lived on Lookout. Rising Farm? Maybe it was 398. It was, okay. And of course, the area code then was 404. And it'll always be 404 to me. This newfangled 706 stuff I'm still getting used to. And I remember growing up hearing the teenage boys in our store talk about going to Trenton and trying not to get arrested by Hot Rod. Evidently, there was a police officer here known as Hot Rod. Never met him. This was a little before my time, but all the teenage boys in Bryan, Alabama were scared to death of him, and they didn't want to drive too fast through the courthouse square, or Hot Rod would pull you over, or might even run into you. That's what I used to hear. I don't know. But those are a few of my favorite memories of Dade County and Trenton. Again, I just want you to know that most of you live here, and I don't ever want you to take it for granted. I wanted you to see how someone who has never lived here, who's always been on the outside looking in, thinks of you, your neighbors, your community, your businesses. It's special. And you all have such a great recruiting tool. I would love to be in on conversations in which someone is talking about moving a business to Dade County or Trenton. Think of all the selling points. That's got to be one of the easiest jobs in the world. I mean, you all are offering so much as in infrastructure, convenience, friendliness, affordability, things that neighboring counties and cities can't. So, it's definitely something that I think has a great future. And as much as things have changed, evolved, and improved here, I think one of the things I love about it the most is that I still see yesterday. I still see the same scenery and the same congeniality, friendliness, and hominess that I did when I was a kid. And that's really special. So that's a little bit on where we were and where we are now. In many ways, Dade and Trenton and surrounding cities have changed. In other ways, thank goodness you've stayed the same. So it's really something to be thankful for. Okay, a little bit on my upcoming book that I wanted to tell you about. I was hoping to have some here today. I do have the last 6 copies. I brought my entire collection of the old books, in case some of you don't have these. I wrote this one about Chattanooga radio and television. I think I have 4 copies of this left. And this is the history of local broadcasting from the early days, 100 years ago, to the great Luther, my lifetime hero, Bob Brandy, Miss Marcia, Mort Boyd, and the more current people as well. But it's been a very special book to me over the years, and I brought a few of those along. And then Volunteer Bama Dog, which was inspired by a little story I did a few years ago about the spot at the Dade, Marion, Jackson County line where you can stand in 3 states at one time. And I wrote about growing up out there and some of the stories that I've shared with you today. That's also brought a couple of copies of those. So if you're looking for a Christmas present for someone that has everything, if they don't have an autographed copy of my book, you can grab one before you go. We'll do that. But the new book that I have, I'm very excited about. When Evan first asked me about coming about 3 months ago, I said, cool, I'll have this book ready by then. You may have noticed during the pandemic, if somebody tells you something's going to be ready on Tuesday, it might be available on Friday. If they tell you it's going to be available in June, it'll probably get to you in September. That's just how we have to live right now. And that's what's happening with the book. There's various delays that are related to all this work shortages and things we have going on now. But I am supposed to have it in about 3 weeks. It's called Hello Chattanooga, the famous people who have visited the Tennessee Valley. And what I've done, it's a 600 and something page book with 200 pictures of every famous person, whether it be rock star, actor, military figure, president, athlete, anybody who's known nationally or worldwide, who has visited this area, by that I mean about a 50, 60 mile radius of Chattanooga, since 1900. And it was fairly easy to get the list of people who played the big stages, Memorial Auditorium, UTC Arena, the Tivoli, Lake Winnie, and then also the various high schools and other arenas in our region. But what was really fun for me was going back through literally 120 years of newspaper clippings, finding some very unusual stories about people who have visited here. And it goes back to legendary show business names like Sarah Bernhardt, Helen Hayes, the magician Harry Houdini, the former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. I have a quick story about him. Before World War II, he came through Chattanooga with his daughter and stayed at the Reed House. And word started getting around Chattanooga, Winston Churchill's here. He's on the 10th floor of the Reed House. So a reporter from the Chattanooga Times, this is back in 1927, goes up to the 10th floor of the Reed House, knocks on every door, and eventually Sir Winston Churchill answers in a bathrobe and curses the reporter out, slams the door in his face, and calls the manager and says, "Don't let any more newspapermen up to my room." So just to let you know, this whole thing about people hating the news media, it isn't new. This has been going on forever. Winston Churchill was among them. We've had 27 presidents visit our area either before, during, or after their presidency, starting with the 5th president, James Monroe, and continuing on through Obama, Trump, and now Biden. They've all been to Chattanooga at some point in their lives. And I love looking back at some of these clippings of people who have visited here, finding people who played or performed on the stages of Memorial Auditorium before anybody knew who they were. In 1940, the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra played on the stage at Memorial Auditorium, and the newspaper review the next day listed the boy singer for the orchestra in one sentence. Oh, and by the way, a young man named Frank Sinatra was the singer. Nothing like, oh my God, Frank Sinatra, he's going to be the next big thing. It's like, and by the way, in addition to all those great drummers and saxophonists, Frank Sinatra sang. He never came back. Billy Graham on the stage of Memorial Auditorium at the age of 26 when he was a youth pastor. Bob Hope and Doris Day, in the prime of their careers in the 1940s, doing radio shows from the auditorium of Chattanooga High School, which is now School for Arts and Sciences on 3rd Street. Bing Crosby visiting the WACS, the Women's Army Command in Fort Oglethorpe in 1943. The rock guitar god known as Jimi Hendrix, who was a legend in the 60s, played on the stage at Memorial Auditorium, not as a headline act, but he was a guitarist for another act, Sam Cooke, in 1963. Nobody knew who Jimi Hendrix was at that time. John Goodman, who you know as the husband on Roseanne, he was in a supporting role in a play at the Tivoli at the age of 24, and he was skinny. All these rock acts that today are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and are considered to be the best that there ever was, The Who, Herman's Hermits, The Animals, all played Memorial Auditorium in the 60s. One thing that surprises people, Elvis, our Tennessee neighbor from Memphis, never played Chattanooga. Passed through many times, slept at the Reed House, but never played Chattanooga. Dolly Parton, as many of you know, got married in Catoosa County, not far from here. Alabama, the group from Fort Payne, played all the time around here in the 70s, these little nightclubs like the Night Deposit, places like that. Nobody knew who they were. Britney Spears was an opening act for someone at the arena at the age of 18. We didn't know she'd become the famous person and news figure she is now. Same for Taylor Swift. She opened for Kenny Chesney. She was a 17-year-old teenager. Most of the audience is sitting there going, when's Kenny coming on? Who's this girl? Let's move on. Sports, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, all played at Angel Stadium. Still there today, same spot. Golfers, Bobby Jones, Sam Snead, Jack Nicklaus. Arnold Palmer basically lived here for a while. He owned a company here. Lori Morgan, the country singer, played at Lake Winnie with her dad when she was 13. We have some great pictures of that. Marty Stewart, great singer in his own right. Johnny Cash's son-in-law, played banjo for Flatt and Scruggs on the stage of Lake Winnie at the age of 12. Johnny Cash played at Lafayette High School to pay back Sheriff Ralph Jones for not keeping him in jail when he was arrested on one of his many drug charges. Johnny Carson played the Memorial Auditorium 4 years before he started hosting The Tonight Show. At that time, Johnny was just some game show host. Aretha Franklin on the stage of Howard High School. Not because she was a star, her dad was a traveling evangelist. He was the star, she just sang on stage. On and on. Of course, also cover live wrestling, roller derby, the mall singing conventions, the jet fly spectaculars where Neil Diamond and Ray Charles were up there, frankly, before people knew who they were. There was a newspaper review of Kenny Chesney when he was an opening act for Garth Brooks at Memorial Auditorium. Nobody knew who Kenny Chesney was. The newspaper reviewer wrote, opening for Garth Brooks was a young man named Kenny Chesney who looked like he was wearing his father's 10-gallon cowboy hat. He'll never amount to anything. Jeff Foxworthy was an opening act. Bruce Springsteen came to Memorial Auditorium. Very few people showed up. He never came back. Tammy Wynette had never played outside her home state of Alabama. They booked her at Lake Winnie. That was her first appearance out of state. Of course, I also cover a lot of the stars who grew up here and became big stars. Kane Brown, most recently, Lauren Elena, Samuel Jackson, Usher, and so many others. So when this book comes out, I hope you'll be interested in it. I'm hoping it'll be a nice Christmas gift for someone. The pictures are amazing because they're all of the pictures in there are of these performers when they were here, either meeting fans, signing autographs, or on the stage of the local arenas. So that's something I've been working on for years, and I hope you'll check that out. I want to close with a couple of quick things that I have written, two of the columns that people have considered their favorites. So one of mine, for those of you who do watch me on the news, if you watch carefully, you'll notice that there are certain phrases and words that we use way too often. And I call them news cliches. I've been trying to find them before I read them on the air and erase them, but they do sneak through from time to time. For example, if I had a nickel for every time I've ended a story by saying, the investigation is continuing, I'd have some serious cash. I mean, that sentence should never have to be said. It should be obvious. We all know that cops and firefighters aren't just going to leave the scene and say, you know what, Ralph, I'm stumped by this one. Let's just forget it and hope it blows over. Yeah. Sometimes we trivialize death. You know, there will be a big storm in Iowa, and we'll say damage was extensive, but there was only one death. And you know, to that person's family, only one death was kind of a big deal. That person started the day alive and well until that storm came. And there are so many more. In politics, we say, Smith and Jones are on the campaign trail today. Where is that trail exactly? And are there any markings on the trees maybe to lead them? If we say canine dogs, shouldn't we also say human people? What's the difference in that? Oh, and police need your help. Oh my goodness, I say that with everything. Police need your help finding the man who did so and so. I'm always afraid that there's somebody at home watching that going, Martha, did you hear that? Police need our help. Grab the guns. We're taking the gun over. No, we don't need your help that bad. Oh, you know, we say that people were in a terrible accident. Is that opposed to a wonderful accident? And have you ever had one of those? We describe a senseless crime, so you'll know it wasn't a meaningful crime. There's a big difference there. We tell you that an injured person was taken to a local hospital. Isn't that good to know? If y'all ever see me on the side of the road and need to be taken somewhere, make sure they take me to a local hospital. I'm afraid they're going to take me to Montana, and I may not make it. How about this man is lucky to be alive? Having witnessed the miracle of birth a couple of times, I want to tell y'all something. We're all lucky to be alive. Sometimes we use a lot of words, but only two will do. Doesn't totally engulfed in flames mean on fire? What's the difference? Oh, I like it when they say, thanks to a fire this afternoon, a local business was destroyed. Well, thank you, fire. Thanks a lot. One of the radio stations, not yours, Evan, but one of the area radio stations does an obituary show. And every day they read the obituaries. And I actually heard a radio announcer say one day, well, it's time for our listing of obituaries. I'm sorry, we don't have any today. Try harder tomorrow, folks. Let's give them something to read. That's so sad. I'm so sorry. The weather people ad-lib everything. My friend Paul Barris would sometimes say, currently right now in Chattanooga it's 71. And instead of saying, old man winter is bringing on the white stuff, just say it's going to snow. We used to have one guy, some of you may remember on Channel 12 back when I was a kid, named Harv Bragg. He didn't take the weather seriously. He had fun with it. He wasn't a meteorologist. He was just doing the best he could with the limited information he had. And he had one of those boards behind him that was like a magnetic board. And if it was going to storm, there'd be like a lightning bolt. And if there was if there was going to be sunshine, he had a little sunshine, smiley sunshine magnet. And if it was going to snow, get the idea. And one day on live TV, he was forecasting some winter weather, and the snowflake magnet just fell off. The magnet's what it is sometimes. And Harv was quick. He turned around and said, well, as you can see, it is going to snow, but it's not going to stick. I have a long history with women. I see some here today. I used to date some girls in Dade County. None of them are here today. That should tell you something. I had a great mom who introduced me to peanut butter sandwiches, fried bologna, and egg toast. That is still my food pyramid. I don't care what the government says. I grew up with two older sisters who protected me like a diamond. They treated me with tender, loving care around the clock. I'm pretty sure if I had two older brothers, I would have been a human football, so I'm very fortunate. And I've been married for quite a while to a woman. As Cindy would tell you, I have given her 26 great years. The other 10, kind of rough. But the thing I've learned on this particular topic is, And you're getting this on video, right? This is, okay, I want to say it right into the camera. Women are better than men. I'm going to tell you why. There are 7 ways that I can illustrate that. Women listen. Women listen. Guys pretend to listen. We're very deep into our ball game, while she tells us about her cousin's wedding, or sometimes about her friend from college whose upcoming visit is 2 weeks from Sunday. We'll sit there and go, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, sure. And then when the day arrives and her friend knocks on the door, we're shocked. Well, nobody told me she was coming. If only someone had told me, I would have, mowed the weeds. Women, thank you for listening. And women listen to everything. There's this one joke going around about the Alexa device. It gives you all the answers to your questions. If you're concerned about Alexa listening to your private conversations, they're developing a new one called Alex. He doesn't hear anything. Number 2, women are compassionate. Y'all with me on this? Women have compassion. When I watch the Braves, and they're good this week, I'm thinking about strategy. I want to know what the next pitch will be and if the batter can adjust. Women see the human side. My wife will say, I wonder how his family's doing in Venezuela. Or my wife will say, poor Freddie Freeman, he doesn't seem like himself. I think he needs a hug. Moments later, Freddie strikes out. Cindy saw it coming. On 95-degree days, she will ask, when the pitching coach goes to the mound, why doesn't he give that tired pitcher a bottle of water? Women are compassionate. She could be the dugout mom. She would scold them when they throw their paper cups on the ground and insist they shake hands with their opponents when the game is over. That's how it should be. Women have stronger senses. That's number 3. They see what guys don't see. They hear what we don't hear. They smell what we can't smell. Like that time I had some lasagna for lunch with extra garlic. That night, as soon as I said hello to my wife, she goes, ooh, what did you have for lunch today? We were on the phone at the time. Amazing. Number 4, women have better memories. Anybody agree with that one? Women remember everything. While looking through some old pictures recently, she started doing play-by-play of vacations we had decades ago. Do you remember that weekend we spent in Savannah? We didn't like the beach that much, but we went to that Mexican restaurant, and we even went back a second time, and you had chimichangas, and I had a salad. And when I went back the next day, I had the chimichangas, and you had the burrito supreme. I don't remember being in Savannah. No idea. She probably remembers the waiter's name. Women have better radar. She can detect changes in the weather long before me, your pets, or your TV weatherman's Doppler radar. If she has pain above her left eye, that means it's snowing in Chicago right now. And it'll be here by Thursday. If her big toe hurts, we're about to get 2 inches of rain. Who needs a weather app when you've got a woman in the house? Number 6, women have better songs. Think about this, and I'm an old rock and roller, I can testify. They have Pretty Woman. We have Nowhere Man. We have Old Man. They have Sweet Talking Woman. We have Street Fighting Man. They have beautiful love songs about Caroline, Rosanna, and My Maria. We're stuck with Bad Bad Leroy Brown, A Boy Named Sue, and the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Not even close. The ladies win again. Women are more family-oriented. Most women know their first cousins, their second cousins, plus all their spouses and kids. I have been meaning to meet all my cousins, I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And when I talk to men about this, they always rise to their own defense. They said, hold on, man, wait a minute, you're bad-mouthing men. We're handy around the house. We do the heavy lifting. And sometimes we even put the toilet seat down. I said, those are all good points. And they say, by the way, if you'll notice, look at the White House. We have run the government since the beginning. We have made it what it is today. Guys, you should have quit while you were in it. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate the chance to talk to you today. I look for any excuse to come here, so invite me back sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I did learn something today, so it's true to our form here, lunch and learn. So we provided lunch, and you taught us some things, and great insight and nice stories about our area. If I could, Carolyn Bradford and Josh Engel, would you come up, please?
As you all know, Dave Carroll has been doing the school patrol portion of WRCB for a number of years now. And anytime he's reported on Dade County schools, or anytime there's been a question, particularly that might be newsworthy that has appeared on social media, he's always been very fair to the Dade County school system. He'll give us a call and ask the superintendent and principal if there's anything if there's anything to it before it just comes on the news. So on behalf of the Dade County Board of Education, I would like to take just a moment to present this certificate of excellence. It says, for his long-time news coverage of the Dade County school system, Mr. Carroll has informed the general public about issues affecting the public schools with a fair and non-biased view, and with the intent to always put the safety and well-being of the students first. Presented this 5th day of August 2021. So, thank you. Joining me this afternoon is Board Chair Ms. Carolyn Bradford and new board member Dr. Jane Griffin.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's very kind.
Thank you. Couple other things to take care of before we get going, so don't head for the doors yet. If I could, I would like Kathleen Reed